Well, hello. I do that a lot. Touchdown. Well, hello, guys. This is funny before we do the intros. I was in Nevada a couple weeks ago at doing a rec center visits, and I was in this one like GP room, general purpose room, in this really magnificent building, and there were like glass walls. So like the kids were lining up outside in the hallway to come in to see me, and they're just staring at me like through the glass. So like they're like little kids, they're like third or whatever, third graders, second, third graders. So I start doing like this fish thing in the glass. I'm like, and they're just like, what's wrong with him?
They started getting out of line.
No, I think I was a little too much for them, and I think this is the modern child. They're just like,
modern kids don't know what a fish is.
yeah, what does this mean? It's the guilt, the fit. Get it? And with that note, let's start this. Well, hello, and welcome back, all and sundry, to Pencil, your favorite Wednesday live stream featuring expert cartoonists. You see, I didn't say pandemic this time, but I said it anyway. Featuring expert cartoonists who go live on camera to talk to you, dear viewers. All three of us have storied careers in comics, illustration, and/or animation, and we're really fortunate to be doing this for Mike. Are we hitting 4 years yet? Something like that.
We're over 4 years now.
Oh my gosh! And as I said in the past, this is a sister project of Mike Manley. That's him down there. EIC of Draw! Magazine, published by Tomorrows. And as the tides change, gentlemen, so do we, and we want to make sure that we give you good comic book content in a different format. My name is JAMAR Nicholas. I am a cartoonist in good standing, and in the traditional book space, they call me an author illustrator. Leon the Extraordinary is on store shelves now. The second book in the series at Scholastic Graphics will be out in stores 2024. I would be remiss if I did not introduce one of the co-hosts over here. My wingspan isn't as good as it used to be. They call him the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. His name is Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you.
Well, hello.
Welcome to the third part. This is exciting. For folks who don't know who I am, my name is Steve Conley. I'm the writer and artist of the webcomic The Middle Age, which is about a knight who is in love with a dragon and has a cursed sword which hates him. And you can read it over on my website and on Webtoons and Tapas and Go Comics. It's all over the internet. And I also make TTRPG content, like role-playing game stuff, including the Emmy-nominated Intoximancy. And I think I would be remiss. That's the word, right? I would be remiss if I. But by the way, Mike, I'm getting a whole John Wick thing going on. Looks like you've got like you're going to pull out guns on.
He's got Kaiju Akimbo on his chest. Oh no, he's about to pull out some hardware.
Oh no.
I'm afraid to see what he comes up with.
It is a tower of power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, the masked marvel of mark making. What are you doing down there, Mr. Mike Manley?
Oh, I was looking for my gun, but
maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. Actually, I do have a gun. I have a replica of the Phantoms.
The Phantoms 45, right?
Yeah, I bought a replica when I started
to get nervous. Where's my gun?
Where's my gun?
You can't find it. That's the worst part.
A cat stole my gun again.
You guys, Notorious JRD just said, I ought to know better. The fish gag is 2 generations ago. Today's kids don't know what a fish is. We're living in the future.
You have to do a baby shark.
Oh, there you go. See, learning every day. Everybody, welcome back to the live stream. As you may have seen on the door, what I always mess it up. The booth should have told you out front. This is Pencil to Pencil, the third what is this? The part 3 episode.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a sequel. The first one was great. The second one was kind of a disappointment. Everyone really liked the first one, but the third one is kind of a return to glory.
So this is our Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, we got past our awkward sophomore stage.
Yeah. And the fourth one, Mike gets launched in a refrigerator after a nuclear explosion.
That's right.
Oh wow, I love it. We need our own jump the shark moment. This might be it. So if you have been watching along with us for the past couple of weeks, we have been continuing a discussion about it's a two-pronged discussion. One is about the cost of doing business as a professional comics artist, illustrator, animator, let's say freelancer, we'll just call it that. And also we've been talking about preparing for convention season. And for some of you who may not know, right now, San Diego Comic-Con is in full effect. It is indeed preview night as we speak. The three of us are not obviously at San Diego this year, but but we do have some agents in the field out there, and we're getting reports hourly about what's going on. And maybe we'll start there. Without getting too much in the weeds, or maybe this is a good way to jumpstart Mike. Thinking about the actors' strike, which is happening in tandem with the writers' strike, and also how that's been affecting. I guess we'll see what happens over the weekend with attendance for San Diego Comic-Con because of the actors not being able to. Well, now they're starting to kind of give more guidelines for what the actors can and can't do. At the end of last week, it seemed more like actors weren't even coming, but now it sounds like they can.
Or like you couldn't come.
Right.
Right.
Now it's starting to turn into kind of like there's parameters for what
you can. Yeah, I think you can promote yourself, but you cannot actively promote anything that you're
like
on.
A project. Right.
So you can be there because you're, you, and I guess you can sign autographs. But I guess there's no panels, and you can't, there's no big Hall H, where like they'd have all the studios and they announce all the new Marvel movies or the new, that was always a crazy thing where there'd be people camping out so they could get into Hall H to see some celebrity way out their little head on the stage. I'm like, oh my God.
Now maybe I have this wrong because I was there last summer and I hadn't been in a long time. It may have been 20 years since I had been. Yeah, it may have been like 2002 or 3 the last time I was there before last summer. And I had kind of like a lunch meeting with somebody, and I had to walk off campus to this place, and there was just like a line that was going across the marina and around a building and up and down, and I was like, is that where Hall H is? Hall H is like in another building, if I'm not mistaken, and some of you lifers can tell me if I'm wrong, but I was just like, there are people out there with like lawn chairs and canopies and tents. It's serious.
Well, also when you were there that time, they were still building the last part of the convention center.
Oh, right? Maybe there was a lot of construction. Yeah. Right,
because they were still constructing it. I was there 4 years ago, I guess. And it was fun to see my friends, but I have to say it was not fun because it is so stressful. Like sometimes you just want to go sit down.
Yeah, word up.
Walking around. You want to go sit down. You can't find so you got to just like sit on the floor. Basically.
There's no place to sit.
Well, there's that one area that has all the chairs and tables, like on the mezzanine or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they had a lot of stuff outside was sort of blocked off, so they didn't want you to go outside. So.
Just add to the kind of like parameters of what was going on the last couple of years, and lines for getting your kind of like COVID check wristband and all those kind of stuff just kind of added to the congestion.
Yeah, luckily I was there before all that.
And one thing that I kind of felt like it didn't see when I was walking the floor, it didn't seem as, even though it's crowded, like if you've never been to San Diego and somebody plops you in the middle of it, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I know that it could have been more people, you know what I'm saying, which is kind of scary if you think about it. And I was walking around going, this is kind of nice. Like you can actually, you're not shoulder to shoulder just getting carried
Right.
through the show, because that happens.
That's how it was when I was there, especially that Saturday in the middle of the biggest hall, because you had like Lego and Star Wars, and you got all that stuff there, which is like body to body to body to body. So you're like little weeble steps,
Move that body. I don't want to get straight.
Then you had to go. It's like you wanted to go to Artist Alley. You had to go way, because who cares about artists? Artist Alley was the furthest away it had ever been. Yeah, and Artist Alley, not to like tell tales, but Artist Alley is tight. It's like tight. It's like, I think the tables are like, what do you get, a 4 foot?
4 foot and 1 chair.
4 foot. So it's an 8. You're splitting with somebody, right?
You get 4 chairs but 1 leg.
And again, I'm trying to be very,
I saw Kim Jong-gi
even there.
drawing when I was there.
Oh, was he was an Artist Alley, right?
He was an Artist Alley. He actually recognized me, which was sort of weird, because he used to like my Instagram. But I watched him draw, which was fun to watch him draw. You could tell he really had that super concentration, because it's so chaotic. There's so many people, and there's so much just like noise, going on, because there's so many booths that have something, and they're playing film clips and everything. Yeah, I saw. I liked San Diego because I would get to see people on the West Coast that I didn't see on the East Coast. A lot of animation people.
Yeah.
Like I saw Bruce Timm. And I hadn't seen Bruce since I saw him at a WonderCon back when I was working on the show. So it was fun to see a lot of people like him, Dan Reba, and Mike Mignola, people I've known for a long time. But it does stress you to be in a room and just the logistics. You have to really sort of figure out what you're going to do. Like, where are you going to go? Where are you going to eat? Who are you going to, you can't do like at some other shows, you might be able to get 10 people together. You can't get 10 people together to go try to go eat in San Diego. You'll never get in anywhere, right?
Or you might not even see them, because you could go the whole weekend and just like, you were there? I didn't.
Yeah, it is like they dropped this. It's like they dropped Disney World into a city for a weekend, and by Monday it's gone. It's wild.
I found that. I used to do it fairly regularly up until around early 2000s, but I found that you had to sort of like have your game plan early. Like, we're going to go eat at this place. Just meet there, right? Just you got to make your way back to your hotel, and then you got to make your way. This is all pre-Uber and all that stuff. And you would be so beat up from the show, you would want to go home and go back to your room and take a nap. Kind of like detox right before you would go out. So when I stayed there 4 years ago, I stayed a little ways away over like where the Dick Blick is. So sort of off campus,
Mm-hmm.
away from all the major hotels, stayed in this little place.
You stayed with Jack Tripper and Chrissy
Yeah.
Snell.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice because we could go out and walk, get a nice dinner.
Mm.
The other thing was that you had the apps by then, which you didn't have in the early 2000s. So you could say, "Oh, what's in my area that I can walk to?" And you could call them and say, "What is your wait time?" And you can go, "Wow, there's 90 minutes here,
Mm-hmm.
there."
Mm-hmm.
That helped quite a bit. If you try to stay at I used to always try to stay at the Hyatt. The problem was always being able to get a hotel room. But this time, or the last time, I didn't even try to stay at any of those hotels.
Right. Because that was part of like trying to get Taylor Swift tickets. Is what trying to open, once the hotels open up. And people are like on there all morning trying to get
sold in like 5 minutes. Everything was gone, right?
Yeah, it's wild.
And I remember the last time I went, and Blevins and I split a room. So he was on the phone and I was on the phone, and you just dial until you get through and get a room. And I think one time we ended up having to stay down in Encinitas. We had to stay like 20 minutes. We had to drive out of town to get a place.
Wow. And you know what? I think things are. Hey, what's up, Big John? John says, I was there only once in 1984 with Mike Zack. Marvel paid for everything. We were promoting Secret Wars. Next year will be 4040 Secret Wars, right? No, what does that stuff mean? Secret War, Star Wars in San Diego? I don't know. What are we talking about? Will be somewhat fun to return once, I think. John, I would love to speak more on that. It's good to see you. Welcome to the chat. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like there's such a history of San Diego, whereas to the general populace, Comic-Con is San Diego. And there's so many shows with the Comic-Con at the end of their name. It confuses most people. It's like, oh, I thought Comic-Con was in San Diego this year. No, it always is. This is just another Comic-Con.
Right.
Weren't they trying to sue people saying that they were the only ones who could say Comic-Con?
Yeah, they have a registered trademark on it, but I think they've come up with it sort of like the word superheroes, how Marvel and DC have agreed. But I think they famously sued a convention that was, I think, promoting in their territory, like with signage in San Diego about their Comic-Con. And I think that was a bridge too far. Salt Lake, Bill's got it.
Yeah, everybody. I love this chat. It's jumping.
But I think it was a thing where that's one of the reasons why C2E2 became what it was, and Wizard World was no longer Chicago Comic-Con. I think there was a lot of backing off early in the ownership of the name.
But that's kind of like petered out because there's a lot of shows that use Comic-Con in the name, right? Like even New York Comic-Con. So I think we get it. But I think that kind of speaks to where I wanted to go with this conversation is that to the layman, there's only one Comic-Con and it's in San Diego and it's happening right now.
Yeah. So
when you add in the influence and influx of Hollywood on that show, there are a lot of people, and this is just kind of how it works. A lot of people, their vacation for the year is to go to Comic-Con. Like it's real. Like you're saving up all year to go to Comic-Con. And with the, I don't know, I guess threat of there not being all of these movie panels and all that kind of stuff, that I think to a lot of the comic book guys just see it as an annoyance in a split of the traffic. I'm curious to see what that does to attendance. And I know a lot of this stuff is non-refundable. You got your tickets to Comic-Con. If, Josh Whedon ain't showing up, you ain't getting a refund.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I wonder what you guys think about that, and I guess the shakeup of Hollywood not being as involved in Comic-Con this year.
Well, I think it was it's sort of inevitable because things go hot and cold, right? It's funny. I was at my podiatrist today, and we got on that subject and like how geek culture is mainstream culture in general, right? And because of that, everything blows up, and then naturally everything recedes. You know,
Right.
I mean, I think for a long time, probably at least 20 years, comics was the least important thing in Comic-Con because it was all about Hollywood. It was all about everything else. It wasn't about artists and writers and people who made comic books. Ew, comic books. It was all about. The last time I was there, before 4 years ago, Lord of the Rings and Twilight were really big, and all these girls and their moms were like, you know, camping out to get into Hall H to see
Twilight. Yeah.
the Twilight thing, right? And so, you know, it sort of felt like if you had been grandfathered in and gone year after year after year after year, okay. If you were not and you were trying to get in and you were a cartoonist, who cares, right? Because the Hollywood people are buying booths and there's a wait list, right, to get your spot. And if you don't go every year, once you get a spot, then you're like at the back of the queue.
Right.
And I think for a long time, conventions were also a way not only for people like us to meet our fans, they were also a way for you to do business. Oh, you get to meet this person and you get to meet that person. And hey, do you want to do an issue? Hey, you want to, you know, a lot of business was done. I think I talked about this before, you know, usually probably up until about 10 years ago. Every convention I went to, I picked up work. Right. Simply because I saw a person at the show and they said, hey, you want to do something?
Right.
That's really kind of gone now. And the usefulness of a show, I believe now, to promote or to drum up business for yourself is really marginalized because there really is a constant show 24/7, which is the internet. So, you know, signing books, getting a sketch. I know my friends Mimi and Liang are doing Artist Alley. There's so much competition now to get in Artist Alley that a lot of shows you get waitlisted. If you're not in there right away, you get waitlisted, right? Which is sort of odd because most of the people who are in Artist Alley are, it seems like a great proportion of them are people doing fan art, not even necessarily doing their own material. There is some of that. But I would say it seemed like at least half were people doing, Baby Yoda, right? Their version of fan art. So it's really the whole thing has kind of changed because I mean there's literally every weekend probably 10 conventions going on. I mean even this weekend maybe not, but I know a couple weekends ago my friend Liang was at Tidewater. Is that the one in?
I was in Virginia, yeah.
Right. She was at the one in Washington, D.C. It was the same way as Heroes.
Oh, right. That was a couple weeks ago.
Right, yeah.
Oh, Awesome Con, you're talking.
Awesome Con, right. So there are multiple conventions, even on the East Coast, within the same week. And then you wonder, like, it used to be, in my youth, there was 3 big conventions. San Diego, and there was always one in New York, and then one in Chicago. And then Wizard came along, and suddenly, and now they were bought up by Repop. So there's 2 or 3 major corporations that do every weekend have a show. One's in Denver, one's in Boston, one's in New York, one's in, in Florida, one's in Ohio, one's, they're all over. And I think they used to be very special because there was only a couple a year. Now there's so many, I don't know. I think you have to sort of, I was asking Liang, she's been doing a lot of them. You have to sort of like think about picking what works for you. Like this show, they don't like anime. This show, they really love anime. This show, nobody's got any money. Everybody's kicking the tires.
I think I keep going to those shows by accident.
Yeah, the cost to get in a show is what, $60 now? Probably the average show is $50-$60 just to get in.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you get some celebrity, their autographs are $50-$60. So you get your voice actor from He-Man and a couple other. You spent $200 or $300 just to get in the door. So I don't know. I think the economics of it, and I also think that when you make something really popular, you increase the burn rate in which it will peak.
Yeah.
I think we're actually at that spot everywhere all at once now. I think the conventions, the geek culture just being popular culture, and all the streaming, all the movies. There's actually so much for people to choose from. I think we're sort of we're at the peak now. There we go.
What's that?
We just got our two correspondents just sent this image live from San Diego Comic-Con.
That's fantastic. That's America's Tom Zoller on the right, and your buddy and mine, John Gallagher. They're having a great time.
America's John Gallagher. John Gallagher's America.
And I'm pretty sure Tom's sporting some very nice shades there.
Those look like a pair of Leons. Look at that. Uh-huh. He knows what's up. I asked them to do some espionage for me and go over to the Scholastic booth and see if there's a Leon image printed on anything.
There's some guy dressed up as you there.
Probably like yo, George. No, that's fantastic. So, well, one thing I wanted to say. Oh, and Steve, did you have anything to add about the whole actor Comic-Con? Where your bread is buttered conversation?
I'm hopeful. I think you're probably right that the people are going to go anyway. They bought their tickets. They've got their airline tickets. Everything's in flux. They'll be hopeful that they can maybe still see the celebrities they want to see, but they'll go there and they'll enjoy it. And there might be more room might be more money in the room for the artists. They want something about Deadpool. Maybe they'll actually ask, a Deadpool writer or artist to do something, as opposed to try to get some movie star or producer to sign up.
I want to hit the ball back across the net on this because I think I agree with you. I think that's wishful thinking, but I also don't think that you can transmute a fan of, say, I don't know, Highlander, and now Stephen Lambert's not there, or whatever the dude's name is, and now you're going to show up and buy a bunch of Archies. You know what I mean? I'm not exactly sure if that person is going to change their mode, and they may just walk to the door quickly. But I don't know. I mean, I wonder.
I had some experience with the first Awesome Con in DC. It was like at the convention center, and you go to the convention center, and people went there thinking this is going to be at the convention center, and it was, but it was in a smaller ballroom at the convention center. It wasn't like the floor of the convention center, and people went in there with money, and it was a record show for many people. Just the people went in there, they like, this money is meant to be spent in this room, and they were excited to try something new and they have the opportunity to, because their hands weren't full of stuff. I mean, they're still going to go there and get their Funko Pops and all their collectibles. All the exclusives will still be there, so the people who go there for that will still be able to get that stuff. But I'm hopeful that I'm excited to hear what what John and Tom and others say this weekend.
Eternity Forever says posits about the cost, the cost of doing conventions. You see how we mashed it up?
Oof.
$200 to $300 to get in, because I don't even know what a fan badge is cost these days. Like, because there's also packages. There's like VIP. There's the Shatner pack. There's whoever else you're coming to see. That's a whole separate thing. Because I always see people arguing in the comments at these comic book conventions. Wait a minute, I got to pay separate to see Tom Holland? Yeah, that's the Tom Holland lanyard. That's another $300. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of that. Then to get in, $400 to $500 or more for hotels. Spending money in $200. You haven't eaten yet.
Right.
It's a lot. So
in New York or San Diego, you're going to spend more than $200 a day for a hotel.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Everybody said easy.
And even the $200 airfare is a good deal. So you're doing some frugal shopping. I admire all those prices.
I think Eternity's flight on the wing on that flight.
Gripping on the wing while William Shatner's going.
That's right. Dribbling air. Right. Yeah.
You know, you're in the wheel well of the, you know.
I kind of swore off San Diego. I'll go there if I get nominated for an Eisner, and that's about. You know, they do hook you up with a hotel if you get Eisner nominated. I mean, you still have to buy it, but they have a room block set aside so you can actually get a hotel near the convention center.
That's good. So you don't want to be walking miles in your heels, Steve. We'll have to get you an Uber.
Not at my age.
To me, the bottom line is that you have to weigh what are you getting out of it, right? Are you going? Do you have a new book to promote?
Yeah.
That might actually not even be the place to go in a way, because there's so much other stuff in there, and probably 90% of the people in the room are not there ever for comics, not ever for what we do, right? Most of the people in the room are there for, general audience entertainment,
right?
You know,
for sure.
And I don't think you can necessarily, like Jamar says, I don't think that you can take somebody who was there to see Twilight. They don't give a shit about, you drawing a book. They don't buy comics. They're not comic readers, right? They're fans of some show or some characters or whatever, but they're not fans of comic books. The only person they might know maybe is that old guy Stan Lee, maybe because they watched the films. But
well, now that he died, nobody writes comics anymore. So
right,
I don't know what we're gonna do.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think you have to weigh the cost of having to ship all of your books, like we talked. It's like if you're an East Coast person, that's a very expensive show to do. If you're a West Coast person, it's expensive, but you can drive. Right? You could drive down. But for me to ship my stuff from Philly, right? And the last time I did it, the last time I went, I just was a civilian. I just walked the show.
I was about to say, the last time you were set up, Mike, that's a whole other.
Last time I was set up was 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very expensive then.
It was expensive then, yeah.
Right, yeah, then. And so, yeah, that was almost 20 years ago the last time I was set up. And I don't think I would ever set up again now. I think if I ever did it again, I would do it the same way I did it. I would just go to see people and walk around or whatever. I don't think it financially would work well for me. Because even if, say, you took your art, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
I do better just selling my art as I do now.
Yeah.
And doing commissions, because if you're going to work that hard at that show, it's just, I think it's become a show really for fans. I know a lot of artists that do it because they've been doing it for a long time. And again, they're sort of afraid, like, well, if I don't have my booth this year, I'll never have a booth again.
Right.
Right. That's like rent control in New York. You don't want to give up that booth because once you decide to not go, it's gone.
I know a lot of guys have been doing it since I was doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the reasons they do it, and most of them live in California, live in LA, they can drive down. But if you give that up, you'll never get that spot back again.
Right? Yeah.
I inherited my agent's booth,
mm-hmm.
and I did that for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And then that 1 year I didn't go, that was it. Didn't matter whether you've been paying through the nose to have that spot. That was it. I'd never get it back.
And this is all not necessarily insider baseball, but this is stuff that you learn by being in the business for years. Like there's no website that tells you all this stuff, you know. And it's just like there's like inheritance. It's almost like estate tax. You inherited a booth from somebody. You might have bought them out because they're just like, I can't go anymore. We'll change the name on the thing, and now it's your booth. Like that's all those tactics. I mean, they make sense because that's just the world that is in. And to Eternitine's point, it's a lot of money. I wanted to just point out a part of this. I think especially starting out, and I'm talking about in the 90s. I don't know what starting out looks like now. That's a whole other animal. But I knew, and no one ever told me, and there was no book or crib sheet, but I knew in my gut that at some point I need to go to San Diego just for people to see my face. This isn't setting up a table.
Part of your brain is like the metal part, like in the homing pigeon goes.
Yeah.
I need to go to San Diego to spawn.
Right. And, you know, this is me coming from a world where nobody knows anything about comics. And I'm just making really rash decisions to buy a ticket to go to San Diego, California for 5 days. You know what I mean? And I knew like this is like recon. It's like I had to go in there and just figure out how the stuff works, how the tables work, why people are here and who's doing what and who's spending money and who isn't. And I just think that's such an important part of, you know, getting your feet in the door. It's not necessarily me spending all my money on the table, but I know I came out of there with a lot of contacts. And so kind of what Mike was saying, not necessarily getting work, but I need people to understand that I'm here. And you showing up from the message board and now I'm standing in front of you in San Diego means a lot. There's a lot of currency there. Oh, he's real. He must be serious because he came to this thing. I think I would hate for us to stop talking about this and not talk about how important San Diego was just professionally to be there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and only bigger shows are like that. I do think they're important. If you want to make connections in that way, I think there's no other place to do it. I mean, you can try online, but you know, as we've seen, the online world is crumbling. You know, social media is kind of in shambles right now, and you know, I don't know, Comic-Cons are looking better every day.
Well, I also think that the editorial has crumbled. So I think you have to sort of really think about whether you showing up. I mean, it used to be when I'd show up, you know, Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, all the places that I worked with were there. Now they're not, and none of the people I work with are there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. So there are people I know personally, which is different, right? Mm-hmm. But it also used to be, you know, portfolio reviews, and you know, you could go show your work to somebody, and you know, Marvel and DC would have portfolio reviews. You don't really have that anymore. So I don't know. Honestly, I cannot say that I recommend a young person spend $3,000 or $4,000 to go to San Diego, which is what it might very easily end up costing you to go to try to get work or even promote your book. Because like I said, the traffic flow to some place like Artist Alley or there was Artist Alley and then there was Small Press, and they were not next to each other. They were like separate. Right. There was a lot of animation people that were in Small Press, like Steven Silver, a lot of people like that, who had been there for, you know, forever. It just seemed like, I don't know, you're spending a lot of money, and I just think the economics of things have changed so much in the last 4 or 5 years, even since I was there 4 years ago. I think the economics of comics, the economics of our business, and I think that the economics of our business are going to change drastically over the next 2 or 3 years, which will really kind of, I think, change the playing field for a long time. I think it's all sort of tied in, it's all tied into these big companies. Like, was it 2 weeks ago when the company said, well, we're not going to San Diego? Everybody was like, oh my God, they're not going to San Diego. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to the, and it wasn't like, oh, well, if they're not coming, we still have plenty of other people. We still have, we still have people who actually make comic books. Wasn't, so I don't know.
And let's also not forget that there's other things, other industries previewing and debuting at San Diego. It's really big for toys, or kind of like maybe independent toy lines, and like go over to the NECA booth and see the new Ninja Turtles boxes that are coming out. Even though I think San Diego is probably in a different lane, but on the same scale as Toy Fair used to be. You know what I mean? A lot of things drop.
Lego would have like special stuff.
Hasbro's there right now.
What a workshop.
Yeah, and there used to be a lot of. That was a place you could go buy books that you couldn't necessarily get anywhere else. There would be like imported books from Europe. Yeah. But a lot of those guys who sold that stuff stopped going.
Bud Plant.
Yeah, Bud Plant, and so the things that were interesting to me are gone, except for my friends, artists that I know.
One thing I like about what you were saying, Mike, and even everything kind of comes back around the bend to having miles on the road, because anybody else will walk through there and have no idea the white-haired guy with horn-rimmed glasses is Bruce Timm. But you know who Bruce Timm is, because you work with him, and you go, oh, hey, Bruce, and you guys chop it up in the middle of the floor while people walk around you like they have no idea what's going on. So even inside of that, there's another inside language. You know what I mean? You know who the players are.
It's almost like you have to go big or you got to go home. Like Alex Ross has a giant booth.
Dirigible.
Right? And because he's so well known for working on those iconic characters, it makes financial sense for him to have that. Like Neil Adams used to always have like a giant booth,
30 tables,
right? But for most people, it's not. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, going there without a plan is a terrible idea. But going there in a small press way, and having set up there, I mean, you do leave there with a lot of business cards. I mean, if you're set up there, I think a lot of people will set up in with the hopes that somebody is going to come by and they'll leave there with the connection that turns into an option for their property.
Netflix comes by and goes, Yeah.
But for all we know, they're hungrier this time around with this, they'll just be twiddling their thumbs and walking through there and optioning things.
And that's what took a lot of pressure off of San Diego, is when New York bubbled up. And when New York Comic Con really got hot, like fire marshal hot, when they were like shutting down the doors and kicking people out. Because, New York would show up and, you could talk to somebody from, maybe Nick or Cartoon Network or MTV. And, those people were walking around there with their badges turned inside out. So you don't know who they are. And that I remember when.
Except for their yellow skin. Sort of giant pores.
With their lizard eyes, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
When New York got really hot, that kind of took pressure off of needing to be at San Diego for a lot of people on the East Coast. You know, like, well, I'm going to do New York this year, and that'll kind of get me the same mileage. Um, so I wanted to kind of check on something here. JRD has an actual question, you guys.
No.
Let me put it on the screen, and we could talk a little about this, and maybe we'll change the subject. Do we as creators differentiate between celebrity shows and actual art-driven shows when talking conventions now, or are we still just collectively referring to them all as cons? Let me start on that because we talked a little bit about this in roundabout ways, and again, it's kind of like that inside baseball language that we all understand how this stuff works. Maybe somebody who's just looking on their Twitter feed has no idea the difference between a show from one that's at their rec center in their neighborhood. But that kind of goes back to you kind of having to know there's no way you can physically be at everything. So you have to be savvy about why you're going to the things you're going to. And just kind of like the peer pressure of San Diego. We're spending 45 minutes talking about San Diego, and none of us are there. So you see how important the show is, right? So I think, maybe hearing that for the first time, it's like, oh, well, I guess I need to go to this. But then at the same time, we're griping that nobody's paying attention to us. So, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of weird PTSD there with comic book folk and what's happening to the convention these days. I have one thing to say, and then I'll pass this on to you guys because I've been thinking about this for years, and I've said things to this point. I think that we're very bruised from what's happened to pop culture because it almost feels like the cool kids came in and took it from us, and now we can't even get credit for the thing that we started. That's what Comic-Con feels like to a lot of people, I'm assuming, or oh, everybody's here to see Twilight, like glitter vampires, and nobody wants to buy my books. But I think there's also a part of that where we have to be responsible for how we get treated, regardless of who's, trying to take your toys from you. I said this before. Why can't we have a comic book convention where there's a yellow carpet and Steve Conley comes out there in a nice shiny suit and gets pictures taken of them? That's something we'd have to set up, but it's not to say we can't do it, rather than waiting for TMZ to, see you fighting somebody in the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? I think we can control our own narrative, but I think we're just kind of salty that Hollywood showed up and they're not going to go away.
That's interesting. It is kind of fun. The SPX, the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland, they have their kind of prom almost like associated with the Ignatz Awards, where nowadays, if you haven't been there in many years, they get dressed up. It's an event. It is that thing. They're like basically owning it.
Nerd
and I
prom.
feel like, yeah, we can do that. If that's what we want to do. I'm not sure if that's where my heart's at, but we, there's no reason why we can't. I think it all depends on the comic book industry is in such shambles. It's hard for them to be like, have much swagger in a room full of millionaires, right? It's like if you're going to San Diego and you're like, we're the comic book industry, and no, we haven't sold that many copies, and no, most of the Batman fans in the world have never seen a Batman comic. It's
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I do get that vibe that you're talking about, Jamar, but I feel like that's outside of our control. So we just kind of start with small shows and kind of make our own place.
Right, but I think almost everybody in this room have been vanguards in their own way. Mike has been all over the industry and in animation. Steve, you're the king of webcomics. I've done my thing for a long time, and it's one of those things where just being like really, really upset that these guys showed up, and now people are putting cameras in their face. Well, then what are you going to do about it? You know what I'm saying? Like, none of us are Hollywood celebrities, but we do this other thing. So how do you get that focus on yourself? And we all spend a lot of time marketing ourselves. But when it comes to the cons, everybody just sits on their hands. You know what I mean? And I think there's a way to take this back. I'm not saying anything, guerrilla tactical or anything like that. But I think it's not with outside of the realm of reason that you can get your own, your own shine at Comic-Con. You just got to figure out how to do that. and not go broke. Mike, you got me there.
I don't think conventions are important to me anymore. Right? I don't think not that I don't enjoy going to a convention, but my fan base is aging.
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
And my fan base, the people who know, love, and care about my work, they don't always go to conventions. I think social media has effectively replaced, for me, being able to reach out to my fans, because I see the same, when I go to Baltimore, I'll see the same people every year, the same 100 people, let's say, just pick a number. But I'm reaching out or having conversations with people nationally through my social media, and I just sort of feel like, having been in the ring as long as I have, I'm not trying to play that game. I'm not going to go to a Reed Pop show. I'm not going to go to a lot of those shows because my audience is not there. Right? The audience is not there. And if I look at it just from a real practical point, I'm going to spend a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because you got the day before you go and the day after you come home, right? I'm going to spend that much time devoted to going to a convention. What am I going to get out of it? Am I going to make thousands of dollars or something? Okay. If in order for me to make that much money, I got to work harder than I have to work when I'm at home doing my job. Who am I going to see? Am I going to see friends? Right? Am I going to have? There's got to be something extra for me at this point. That's why I stopped doing the wizard shows. Even the last couple that I could have gotten a free table, I didn't do them because it just wasn't worth my time to go down and sit at a show when 99% of the people who walk through the door are never going to be interested in what I do. So I think you have to be smarter and use your time to promote, your money to promote in a way that's actually going to reach people who like what you do. The old model of going to a con was to show your face, meet people, meet fans, meet your fellow professionals, editors, publishers, get work. Now you meet fewer of your fans, you meet no publishers, because they don't send anybody, they don't send any editors. So I might see friends, so it might be worth it to go. Like if I can drive to Baltimore, I can see a lot of people. But otherwise, for me at this point, it's not really worth. I know people that they're like weekend warriors, and they make their living now doing conventions. And if that works for you, fine. But I would much rather spend my time more effectively to do what I want. I'm not worried about that. Used to be the thing, right? Go to San Diego, somebody would come up, they would like want to take your idea, and you'd get a meeting and they turn it into a cartoon or whatever. I'm not even interested in that at this point because I've already been through that. And the fact is, almost zero of those things happen, get all the way through. Mm-hmm. So I just have to look at how much time I have to put into it and what is the value back to me in the end, right? It has to be a little bit more than just financial. Maybe if I was in the position where it was only financial and that was the only way I was able to work, because there's a lot of guys that are in that position now. They go to cons every week because that's how they make their living, right? They're selling artwork, doing sketches, signing books. That's how they make their living because they can't get work working for the major publishers anymore. So if that works for you, fine. But for me, at this point, I wouldn't want to be doing like 50 shows. I wouldn't want to be. I would much rather be working on creating content. And if I want to sell art, I can just sell art through my social media rather than spending $4,000 to go to San Diego. I'd have to sell $8,000 worth of work just to pay for the,
Yeah.
because you're eating up 50%. So,
and that's a reasonable thing. I mean, once you realize that the San Diego costs what it costs, then you just have to take that into account. And if you're going to go there, I know some people who would lose money every year they would go, thinking that, okay, but I get to have these meetings. I'm going to go there. I've got all my lunch plans. I know what I'm going to do. I want to meet this person, talk with this person. They had everything lined up, and they're like, okay, I'm going to lose money, but it's for this reason. But if you know that's what it's going to cost. I know David Peterson's going there this year, and I think he's loaded for bear. I think he's probably going to do great. He's got he knows what to expect, and he's planning for it. I think there's a lot of situations like that where, if you're prepared for San Diego, you could do great.
If you break even, I think my publisher, that was his goal, was to break. If you can go promote your books, meet people, do a little business, and you don't lose any money,
right? Make
right?
table. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
we're eating Del Taco every night.
Right. Yeah. But I think a lot of people go and lose money.
Right. And you're at the point, Mike, where you're talking about you make money at home at your art table. To take you away from that table is to lose money. You're already behind. So that's not only just the cost of the show, it's the cost of being away from the table and the work you don't get to do on Thursday and the travel days. And then the recuperation, the 2 days after the show where you're just wiped out. And
well, I used to have to, when I had my dogs, I'd have to board my dogs. If I
so
boarded my dogs for a week, that's $800.
Right.
Right. So again, I just think you have to look at it. If you're a young artist, you're hungry, you're trying to get out there and promote your stuff, then you have to be very effective in the way that you maximize your promotion when you're at a show, which is not sitting down behind your booth. People walk by and that's what they see. They just see the top of your head and some poster of something that they don't even know what the hell it is, right? I just think there's a lot of metrics that are changing in our business that are changing faster than the average person's ability to analyze. And that's just where we are. I mean, really seeing analog publishing continue to decline. And now the retrenchment of entertainment in general. And I think going forward, shows like San Diego that benefited from Hollywood spending all that money are not, I don't think that's going to be the business model going forward now. I think everybody's going to be like, going to start getting kind of stingy with stuff, right? So I just think, like, if you're doing your webcomic, right, and you're in your new webcomic, would it be effective for you to go to a place where people don't really care about webcomics?
I made a list of like promotional tips on my YouTube channel, and it's conventions and appearances was like 7th on the list, like on top 10. It didn't crack the top 5 because because all the expense of a comic convention, then what I said there was it evaporates. When the show's over, you don't get the promotional benefit unless you've gotten business cards or connections or have that mailing list on your table. You don't really get to, the benefit of the convention is like running an ad or a billboard. Once it comes down, you're not getting any more money out of that. If it costs you $3,000 to go to San Diego, you're better off spending $3,000 on commissions for other artists. I bought like a Drew Struzan painting at one point or a Kelly Freeze painting. That's money I spent that I'm still benefiting from.
That's printing comics, $3,000.
That's printing
comics.
I was
about to say, nobody talked about making stuff for your table.
Yeah, it's that money is, there are depending on the cost of the show. That's why I always advocate going to low cost local conventions first and, hit singles before you swing for the fences.
Low cost con?
Yeah,
low cost con.
Seriously, or local, sit at a table on your front lawn.
Bimon Sci-Fi Con.
Splinter Elbow conventions.
Porch Con.
I don't mean to throw you off, Steve. Go ahead.
No. But the idea is just, there are more lasting ways to spend money, to invest money, to think of it as an investment. Right?
You want to catch the wave as it goes up. You'll never be at the peak, right? Nobody's ever at the peak. You never catch the, and then you want to get off before it collapses, right? So entertainment goes in these trends, right? We've all been doing it long enough that we saw the first internet trend of everything going up, and then boom, everything collapsed, right? Now people are they have to pay for stuff, right? Now we're at the point where the wave is cresting, and it's going to come down. It's going to result in a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for the next couple of years while all this sort of shakes out. I saw somebody this week saying that they thought that Apple was going to end up buying Disney. I saw some rumor that Bob Iger might decide to sell off things like ABC, and all that stuff has an effect upon. I think people don't think when they work in comics that they're actually working in entertainment, but you are working in the broad bubble of entertainment, and comics is like one orbit, and video games are one orbit, and sometimes they kind of cross over a little bit. But I think we're sort of in a time where there's going to be a lot of churn and a lot of uncertainty, and you have to, I think, be a little more cautious and a little smarter, and really sort of try to assess where is your audience, and where is your time that you're spending, and not just your money, but your time, because your time is the most precious resource that you have as an artist. Time here working, writing, putting your books together, getting your product out. That is your most precious commodity. And I'm not convinced now that for most people doing conventions, that is the best use of your time. And I say that because there's a lot of young artists who are fan artists and do the sort of the fan art circuit, and which is fine. You might do okay, but in the end, if you're doing fan art and not your own IP, you don't own any of that stuff. So it's only worth it while you're doing the circuit. When you're not doing the circuit, when you're not at a show selling fan art, or you're not selling it off your Etsy or whatever, it doesn't get shut down. It's not worth your time because you don't own it. 10 years from now, if you still have Astounding Space Thrills, you can promote that, Steve. But if you were doing Star Trek, you couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that all that sort of gets lost in the sauce and in the mix. And I think that while there's a lot of technology that allows us now to do things like Kickstarters and all these ways of reaching an audience and building an audience, you might do better to concentrate on that than actually going to a convention, because I think you might actually get more return for doing that than being in a show where you got to draw 20 sketches in a weekend to pay for your hotel room.
Right, sure.
This was a fascinating conversation. There's a couple of little sidebars happening in the chat, and our good friend Khalid, what up, Khalid? had mentioned something about kind of like where are we at with shows these days, and COVID have anything to do with it? And yes, I think COVID actually, well, it's obvious that COVID and the lockdown killed off a bunch of small shows. And I remember people started griping before the pandemic about how there's too many shows. Remember that conversation?
Yeah.
There's a show every weekend, almost like flea markets. There's a show every weekend someplace
Multiple
in the
shows,
United
sometimes
States.
even in Philly every weekend.
Yeah. And, now we're at a point where a lot of those guys haven't come back, and maybe you can breathe a little bit more. I pour out some liquor for the homies who didn't make it. My regards for, that happening. But I feel like there's so many shows, and there's only so many ways you can stretch somebody's dollar. And to that point, I wanted to talk about Philly. As Mike knows, Philly's a rough town for a couple of different reasons. But the Philadelphia comic book convention goer, there's one show, and they went to it, and that's it. Because there was a couple of times there were 2 or 3 things happening right after each other. Wizard World was here, and then the Keystone show showed up.
All right.
And then it was like the punk rock flea market, and then there's something in West Philly, and then I remember being on the escalator at Keystone going down, and this guy, I guess he worked there, had a walkie-talkie. And it's funny to watch the workers look at what's going on. They're just astonished. They're like, it's like, yeah, man, I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on. Get people blue hair. No, did we go to this already? That's how normal people think about this stuff. You can't keep throwing the same thing at people over and over again and expecting them to come again.
Normal people.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
If you didn't see, like, I've also been in places where we didn't even know something happened because they didn't advertise it well enough. If it's not on the bus shelter or it's not on the radio, and you're not signed up to the
Wizard, when Wizard first started doing, and then what was the show before Wizard?
Oh, that was the Great Eastern.
Great East, and then they advertised. They had billboards.
Yeah.
For, this is back in the 90s.
Yeah.
To let people know. But that's when it was about comics and publishing, and he had a few actors and a few big time wrestler, people or whatever.
Right.
But now, like I said, if you're going to go to a convention and more than half the guests are celebrities, I don't know whether it's really worth your time, because the bulk of the people that are coming there are never going to make it to your table. And if they make it to your table, what, 10% are interested in comic books? They might, oh, that's cool, but they're not readers. If you're drawing or writing a comic book, you need people who are interested in reading your stuff, whether it's a web comic, print comic. That's how we make our living, right? That's our base, right? And most of the shows now, the part of it has grown is not the part where people are interested in reading or collecting. That part is the people are interested in cosplay or the mass market general fandom. The same people that like the X-Files and Buffy and Wednesday. You're never going to be interested in anything that I'm doing, right? I know that. So, I have to weigh cost versus reward versus time away. I might do better just to have a day off to recharge rather than be having to run for an airplane.
But the benefit of these things sometimes is that there are people who go there who are readers. You know what I mean? I'm not saying every convention, but there is still a value in doing these things, but making sure the cost is low, to do your due diligence beforehand, talk to other cartoonists who have set up at these shows. What kind of show is it? There was the Pittsburgh Comic-Con I did many years. My upbeat sci-fi stuff never really resonated there. It was much more of a kind of a metal tattoo art kind of vibe to the artwork that was popular there. No, I mean that's not a bad thing, but it was like flash art. It was very lots of skulls and stuff. You know, it wasn't the vibe. My stuff didn't fit there. It's so I feel like trying to find the show that's right for you, and you know, not gambling a lot of money on it, but asking other people who do work that's similar to yours and see, is that a good would that be a good show for me?
Yeah,
That's
it's
what I
funny
think.
you mentioned that because I should have asked Liang to come on. She's just been doing a bunch of different shows, and Liang's my assistant. She just did a show in Denver, and she was placed in an aisle that had a bunch of dark stuff, right? Dark kind of art. And she's doing anime. So she was like on the wrong aisle, because the people who might be interested in anime might look down that aisle and like, oh, there's skulls and, you know, whatever, Glenn Danzig comics or something. That's not what I want.
Scream Queens, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'm looking for, you know, some Trigun or something or whatever. There's a lot of that stuff where you go to a show, you've never been to the show, they put you in a shitty place where there's a pillar in front of you, bad traffic.
Steve's
The
laughing.
shadow,
He knows
darkness.
about that.
It's
Right.
bad.
Yeah, I've been talking to her about that. And I said, you know, when you get to the show, if it sucks, you got to go try to talk to the promoter and say, look, this is not, you know, I'm paying money for this. Is not. But, you know, some promoters are like, fuck you, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's the way it's set up. Tough beans.
Look at the draw. Yeah.
Your sundial table.
Yeah. So, right.
Casting his shadow across it.
Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, you're right next to you're in the back of the room,
Next to the bathroom.
facing the back wall.
Yeah, that's
that kind of thing. So you know, that's why, you know, for me right now, I'm much more interested in, not so much interested in doing conventions, more interested in doing creating content. The more content, the more personal content I create, the better off I'll be, because even the content that I do to keep the roof over my head is only has the limited return of the dead check, right? So, like I said, there's a lot of things that you have to weigh as a professional, that you weigh differently also at different parts of your career. I don't weigh things the same way at 40 years in the business that I weighed at my first year, right? And everything is so completely different that I have to really think about now whether something is actually really going to be worth my time. There's financial reward, immediate financial reward. There's paying it forward. You know, there's planting seeds that may grow. There's all that stuff that you have to take into to consideration. And, you know, the older you get, the more complicated life is, right? You know, so I weigh all of that stuff very, very differently. And, you know, to me, the thing I probably enjoy the most is seeing friends at a show, because every show sort of ends up being sort of the same. You're behind a table, and you see nice people, and you do a sketch, and I enjoy all that. But the atmosphere of the show is all kind of the same: bigger, smaller, you know,
brighter, louder, right?
Yeah, so it's not like I find the ambiance of the average show enjoyable, I would say.
Mike, just to add on to this, and this is funny, when you kind of come back home a lot, or, you know, say, I've been out of town, I've traveled a lot the last couple of months. people, I always feel like people don't know what to say to you because sometimes they say, "Did you have fun?" And that's one of the weirdest questions to get asked because after we've just been talking here for an hour and 50 minutes, nobody said anything about having fun. Like, I'm glad that the readers or the viewers or the fans or the ticket holders had a great experience. I just came up, I don't think I came up with this, but I was just in Springfield Comic Con. And what I was trying to do at my table was probably different what other people were doing, is I was meeting like young families who had kids who were buying Leon books. You want to take a picture? We took a picture with the author. Everybody was having a good time. I signed stuff, gave them things. And in my mind, what I'm doing right now is trying to give people an author experience. You know what I mean? And I think that's a little different from other things. But on the far side of that is that I'm working and I'm not being duplicitous. It's that I'm on as much as I can be more on than I normally am. I'm on, right? And you're on, you talk about San Diego, it's getting in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're dealing with the public. And I don't know how you survive that. And you know what I mean? You crack a little bit after all of those. So fun doesn't really weigh in for us, but not to say that, you know, we're being ogres here, but you kind of see what we're talking about. Like you're working and we're at work.
Well, it's different because as a professional, your reasons are different than being there than a fan. For a fan, it's fun. I'm going to meet the people I like, get a sketch, get an autograph, find a comic, find a thing, see a panel, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's a completely different reason for you're going because it's fun. It's not that it isn't fun, but it's a lot of work. That's one of the reasons why I really liked Baltimore is because it was easy. I could drive there. I'm there a little bit over an hour.
Yeah.
Pull my stuff in. I got my kit down. Very, got it simple. I've learned over the years, like I'm not going to take a lot of original art to try to sell. I can sell my original art at home. Right? So if I go in there, I'm mostly doing sketches. And I take a handful of things for people to look. Because I never sold thousands of dollars worth of art at a convention. I don't, right? Because most people coming are not going to say, well, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
And as the cost of conventions go up, most people are happy to get a sketch.
Yeah,
I don't dog ear my artwork by hauling it around.
Yeah, I don't think I still feel like a startup at comic conventions. I've got this. My table's locked down. I know what I'm doing. I've done this for so long. I feel like an old hand at this. At the same time, when people come up to the table, I have to say, "Have you heard of this? Have you heard of Astounding Space Thrills? Have you heard of the Middle Age?" I'm introducing the brand to people. No idea who I am.
Mm-hmm.
They came here to see John Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
They happen to be. They have a few extra hours at the show, and they're wandering around. And they're meeting, and I do have fun at the conventions. I do enjoy being behind the table. It is, and I loathe getting to the table. I loathe leaving the table and driving all the way home. But when I get there, I have so much fun. I mean, I do. It is work, and it's draining. It is absolutely draining. But it's basically it's like your face hurts from smiling for like 10 hours, and it is draining too. Hoping to make sales and trying to make sense of it all, but it's the only way to get. It's one of the only ways to, guaranteed introduce my work to new people.
Mm-hmm. You know what took a little bit of what Jared's saying, and I love that energy, Steve. Is that it's a conundrum. I agree with you. It is fun, and I'm enjoying all of the experiences I'm having with people. Like finding somebody who's never heard of it that's like, oh, this is my new favorite thing. That's amazing. All of those little tiny experiences all add up to a great thing. But to JRD's point, is just like being on is draining, especially depending on where your brain stew is set up. You know
Right.
what I mean? And we're talking about all of us have been in this business for a long time, and you are good at what you do. And there are some people who, will say straight up, I don't know how you do this. I can't do this. Or you've ever tabled next to somebody who's got Jimmy legs and they can't stay there for more than 45 minutes. They got to get up and leave. Oh, this is just too much. I'll be back. Where are you going, man? 8 people came by your table. I just, I can't. I just, everybody's going through something at Comic-Con.
That's true.
I wanted to jump on 2 things, you guys, real quick. And I think we're just gonna stab this episode of Comic-Con talk. Eternity Forever says manga is mainstream now at cons. Even Superman is going anime-esque in animation via Korean webtoon style design. Right? I don't think that is something we can debate. And also, our good buddy Khalid, what up, Khalid, asks, is the foreign market, i.e. manga, taking away attention from U.S. creators, along with the stars? So that could be a whole other conversation, but I'm wondering, are we even discussing where manga fits into this at the Comic-Con, or is that its own thing? You go to Otakon if you want to see manga.
We should have asked Liang about that, but from talking to her, I think that there are anime cons.
Yeah.
And then there are Comic-Cons that have some anime in it. And I think it's iffy because there are some Comic-Cons that have anime and she would do better. And there was other Comic-Cons that are just superheroes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's really very little crossing of the streams between traditional direct market Batman fans, X-Men fans, and anime. And I don't think somebody who is interested in reading, who's like a webtoon person, there just seems to still be, that's like a different orbit. Occasionally some things like Saga maybe or some other books kind of cross into it, but I know just from talking to Liang and her experience at the shows, she's gone to anime shows and she's doing anime fan art. She's doing very well. She even has a couple of books that she's published herself. And then you go to like a regular Comic-Con and she won't do as well because maybe the people in Ohio were buying superheroes. I mean, there's a lot of hostility still, I think, between, I know a lot of people who don't like anime or manga. They probably like manga more than they like anime, right? So if you're 15, 16, 17, say you're under 30, that is normal now. That's not even special, right? That's not even special. That's just like normal. To people who are over 40, it's kind of normal, but you remember a time when there really wasn't. Like I remember when Akira came and that kind of blew things up. I don't think that there's always crossover between the fans of both genre. I still think that there's, that's part of what we're all facing, which is the stratification of entertainment in general, right? You've got guys who just like Marvel, guys who like DC, girls that just like anime, people who like certain kinds of anime, people who like, Little Witch Academia, people who like much more violent stuff or crazy stuff like Studio Trigger does. There isn't any more just like one overall umbrella where everything is very stratified, right? If you're a person who just started reading comics on your computer, and I know this from teaching that class, they don't buy anything. They love it, but they read it online because they can get it for free. That's a completely different person. That person may be a big fan of it, they may not even go to a convention, right? They may not have, if you're not going to buy an $8 Tokyo Pop reprint in the dollar bin, the idea that you're going to spend $100 to go to a convention, right? So I think the stratification of entertainment is something that we all have to deal with, and it just continues to split. You know, I watched the first 2 episodes of that new Superman cartoon. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It didn't really work. It really didn't work for me. I felt the things that they changed were too obvious. And I think that it could have been more interesting. Could have been more. There were some interesting things in it, but I don't know. I think part of it too is like every time they do another iteration of these things, they always do the origin. And it's like, I'm so goddamn tired of seeing Superman's origin. You know, it's like every time you do a new thing, you have to do like, oh, we're going to do an X-Men. Oh, we got to do another origin thing, right? So for an older fan, you know, it'll be interesting to see whether it pulls numbers enough for Warner Brothers to continue to do it. I wouldn't want to bet on that with the way Discovery is right now. They may decide to shelve it and take it as a tax write-off, which seems to be the move that everybody is doing. I don't know whether the people who know Superman or might be interested in Superman, I don't know whether you're going to get an American anime fan to fall in love with a anime flavored version of Superman. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of Americans who love anime. They also do not love American anime. They love the real anime from Japan, right? And then the same thing, the people in Japan don't like our stuff, right? They like the real deal. So I don't know.
You know what? I've been loving this conversation. We're going to start wrapping it up. I wanted to touch on these 2 things. Pause. Real quick, EJB says, do your opinions vary on attending a Euro Comic Festival style of show? And that's a good question. I don't have any experience going to Angoulême or anything like that, though from all accounts that I've heard is that it's a magical experience where people embrace cartooning in the art form in a totally different way than they do in the States.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know if Steve or Mike would like to speak to that.
I've only been to one European convention, which was UCAC 1990.
Mm-hmm.
It was different. It was smaller. I know Brett went to one I know Howard Chaykin. There's one in Spain that they've been to that's very nice. But yeah, it's a different experience where actually the con doesn't even open until later in the day. I think
we need to do that here.
Yeah, I think in general, in Europe, they respect art in a way that we do not in the United States. Culturally,
Mm-hmm.
Especially in,
like Europe,
Central Europe, where comics are well known and well respected, and everybody knows, Tintin and Asterix, and although I hear that the younger generations are also love the anime and manga stuff, but from my friends who have been there, it is a different experience than the American conventions.
I can even just say the time that I spent some time in Europe, I was just in shock. It was how they seem to celebrate cartooning. Just like I was in the subway system, and there were giant, because it all kind of curves like this. These giant posters about the Hugo Pratt exhibit or the La Schtroumpfs exhibit somewhere, and the big Mobius exhibit that I seem to miss by 2 days. Like, and that gets just coverage like a L'Oreal ad there. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal to them, which would be here. And Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I've not done any conventions over there. It's kind of on my my bucket list. I'm waiting to get good enough that they invite me over. I'm going to keep working at it.
All right, I believe in you. But I do. I believe you. And going back to being on, our buddy Tim Fielder in the top of Manley's head says, "Well, as anyone who knows me," he said, "knows me. I talk a lot. I know that feeling. So that part, cons, talks, conferences, comes easy to me. I look at it like performance art. I am there to entertain. Sales emanate naturally from my enthusiasm. Effectively, I am the product, the brand." And I feel you on that, Tim. I feel like I share a lot of that same energy with, a lot of you guys have known me for over 20 years. And if I can somehow convince you to like me, you'll probably like my work. And I've never put my work first. You know what I'm saying? So I understand that whole brand thing, especially in 2023. We're all our own brands. So that's something to really celebrate and think about. Thank you, Tim. I didn't mean to shut the room down. I just thought that was a really interesting.
That's fantastic, and I feel that too. It's like you say, I understand about the idea of putting the work first, and I think I started my comic career that way. The art should speak for itself. I'll just be quiet behind the table, let someone come over, and they'll discover it. And after a while, you're like, no.
Yeah.
Start handing a postcard to people as they come up to the table. Break the ice because they might not be comfortable doing that. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I don't think we can exhaust this topic. I wanted to talk more about the cost of doing business, but I feel like we folded all that in. Like we folded all of that into the batter of this evening's conversation. And hold on a second. Last one. We got to get out of here. What up, Patrick? We just got another wave, like the third shift just showed up. Patrick Lugo says, speaking of being on, how different is tabling from crowdfunding? That's a good question. Steve, you want to put any pepper on that? What's the difference between doing a month Kickstarter and being behind a convention table?
I think there's a lot. I think philosophically they're very similar. You're trying to cultivate an impression. You want to give people a sense of who you are very quickly. You want to give them a sense of what the product is very quickly and what they're getting. I think crowdfunding is a little bit different because you kind of have to drag people to the destination versus, Kickstarter is a little bit like a Comic-Con in which they already have they're bustling. People are going through the site all the time, and you have a chance to catch their eye as they're, checking out some other project. I feel like they're fairly similar without the, you just get more exhausted beforehand, and then it's a month-long convention. And you can tell people scramble. Like these crowdfunding campaigns have big starts and big finishes, and it's a lot of nail biting in between. There's definitely some parallels there, but they both require really good mailing lists. So you build your mailing list at the Comic-Con, and then you employ that mailing list to get people to come to the crowdfunding.
I like it. Mike, anything?
Well, I haven't done any crowdfunding, so. Although I plan to do some this fall. I think what it is in the end, all of it, is whether people are invested in you as a creator, right? It used to be that, people were like, you like Frazetta or Neil Adams or Mobius. And you really didn't care what they did, whatever they put out, like your favorite rock group, whatever they put out, you wanted to get. And so to me, that's the way you think of yourself. Think of yourself as you are your brand, right? You are your brand. Some brands transition to other platforms easier. You have to sort of know your strengths and your weaknesses. If you're not good at talking about your work, if you're not good at being able to explain your process, if you're a shy, retiring type of person, then you should probably get somebody to help you with your crowdfunding, like almost interview you or something, and do 75 takes, and then you clip the best ones together. I think teaching helped me even more at shows, because I got so used to talking in front of a group of people and having to explain myself, right? You have to explain your philosophy. You have to explain art. You have to talk art. And I think that definitely gave me a boost. I know some artists who are great artists, but they're not great at talking about their art. They're not performers. And I think, like, for Jamar, you're sort of naturally that type of a person. You're always that way from when I knew you. You're a warm, gregarious person naturally. For some people, that's not a natural thing. So, being on at a show is very stressful for some people if that is not your natural gait. That's not your natural setting. On top of the fact that you're in an unnatural setting anyway, because that's not a natural setting for anyone to be at a show. So, just be honest. You can't really be anything else consistently, right? If you're a shy person, maybe have somebody at the booth that can help you, who's good at talking. Maybe your strength is making pictures. It's not, if you sort of look at Stan and Jack, Kirby was ultra creative, beyond human. Stan was the showman, right? Stan was able to, his talent was making us all believe that whole story of Marvel, right? That was his skill. I don't think that was Kirby's skill. Kirby's skill was coming up with that stuff, right? Same way with Ditko, right? So I think you can look at something like that, and you can have a really good partnership if you have somebody who's really good at doing the business side. If you're not good at doing the business side, know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and then see if you can find somebody to help you do the part that you're not good at. You got to wear a lot of hats now, I think. That's the other thing, the time we're in. Part of the reason why I use social media is to promote myself. Because if I'm not promoting myself, who's going to promote me? None of the companies are ever going to promote me. They may promote me the 2 weeks that new book comes out. Then they don't promote you anymore.
Right? Yeah, that's a wrap, right?
All those shows I did storyboards on, nobody's going to promote that. Nobody's going to, when they put a new DVD out, they don't even send me a copy. So I think you have to sort of, that's the beauty of the time that we live in, is that you can promote yourself. And like I said, if you find that you're not good at that, then get somebody to help you who is good at that.
Word up. All right, that's going to be a perfect place to stop. Thank you guys so much. The chat is calling for a part 4. I feel like we're just being ridiculous at this point.
Part 72.
Part 4. What did you say, Steve? Part 4. Part 2.
Part 3. Part 2. The pardoning.
The pardoning. I always thought it was funny when they made Taken. What was it? Taken. When they made the next Taken 2, it should have been called Tooken. And then the next one after that would have been Ben Had Took. Guys, thanks so much. We had a blast. The numbers were really high tonight. I think all of you guys that were left behind for San Diego, like us, the Island of Misfit
Left
Toys.
behind.
We're
We didn't get raptured up into the Studio City and optioned.
Oh, the rapture didn't take us.
No,
Hall
your option didn't get picked up. Sorry.
We didn't get captured by the rapture.
Don't make shows for the devil. Sorry.
That's right. Yeah, maybe we'll get them next time. Maybe the beam of light will pick us up next year. But all things considered, we should be back here next week at 8 p.m. EST. I had a lot of fun with you guys. Guys, I saw a lot of really friendly faces in the chat. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, what are you doing to me? Please like this episode and subscribe and hit the alarm button so you get alerts when we go live next time. I'm doing this all off the cuff, you guys. This is live. This is live. This is what we do. We talk about being on, you guys. That's right, Marshall. Fun times. And I would be remiss on our way out of here if I did not thank you on behalf of myself, Manley, and Steve Conley. And even though we are not in a pandemic, I think it would behoove us all to
watch our hooves.
Wash those Kirby hands. And oh yeah, don't forget, vote for Steve Conley in the Ennies. Get Steve Conley an Ennie Award. And then after that, he'll get an Audi. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.